Hi, this is George Katouf for AgelessTimeless.com, where we try to answer the question, what do you expect for someone my age? Our response, excellence. We try to interview individuals over the age of 50 or those that contribute to the individuals over the age of 50 to ensure that we're doing everything possible to maximize our health potential. Because remember, your body is a temple. So here we are today, AgelessTimeless.com. We're interviewing a legend, and that is Mr. Clarence Bass. It's a real honor to have him today. If you're not familiar with Clarence, you should be, because in the field of weightlifting, bodybuilding, health and fitness, he's a true legend. And Mr. Bass, Clarence, has authored over 10 books, 3 DVDs. He has a website, cbass.com, which is loaded with hundreds of articles that he's written based on research. In addition, he's been the over 40 Mr. America for his height. He has also been an Olympic lifter in his youth and is an indoor rower, an active participant in fitness, and if that's not enough, he's also an attorney. So with that, Mr. Bass, good to have you today.
Thank you. I want to begin by congratulating you on your website. You've done an amazing job of pulling together people over 50 from all areas of sport. And your clip on YouTube showing yourself running up the bleachers, lifting and doing all those things show that you absolutely walk your talk. And what your theme is that people should continue trying to get better as they go over 50. I started doing that when I was about 15 and kept doing it, and I think that's the secret of my success.
Yes, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. There's a mindset to this. Certainly, you can start at any age, and we encourage that. But if individuals do what you have done, start as a youth and never stop, it's certainly a lot better and a lot easier to maintain the fitness level that you now have. So at the young age of 81, and I don't say that jokingly, this man is still ripped and still physically active. But if we could go back, because I know when I interviewed you for the written interview, you talked about being a youngster, being in a movie theater, and young man next to you flexed his thigh, and you thought that was pretty impressive. And that might have been one of the catalysts to you continuing on this journey, though I know it's not the total. But do you want to talk about what got you into fitness?
Well, it actually started when my dad brought home a barbell when I was in the 5th grade. And as it turned out, he didn't use it much, but I did, and I never stopped. And by the time I got to high school, I was already stronger. And I went out for something called the pentathlon, which was a all-around fitness competition. It was push-ups, chin-ups, barbell, jump reach, 300-yard shuttle run. And the coach there specifically told me, don't lift weights. Athletes don't lift weights. Well, I already knew that I'd had considerable improvement because of the weights. And I've been reading Strength and Health magazine, so I knew about athletes. So, but I competed in the pentathlon, and I won. And there was a picture of me in the paper shortly after that, but it said Bass is strongest. So that was kind of the beginning of me finding out that if I set realistic goals and worked towards them, I could succeed. I could control my life. And I continued to do that. I went on to compete in Olympic lifting, as you mentioned. I won the city championship, the state championship. I placed second nationally in the teenage weightlifting championship. I won all around out this area of the country. I took second. I seem to be a second taker, but I took second in the junior nationals, which was anybody that had not won the senior national championship, the second biggest weightlifting contest in the country. But when I got to about 35, I was pretty sure that I was not going to be able to lift anymore. I've been competing for a long time. And so I was looking around for some other way to improve your theme there. And I'd been active in administrative things in lifting around the country. So I had occasion to see a past 40 Mr. America contest. And the guy that won was somebody that I'd seen years later in the Mr. America, the big contest. And he looked just about as good as at 40 as he did then. Maybe he looked better. He's a fireman. So he had a time to train. So I thought, I'm going to try that myself. And as you say, I won my class in the past 40 Mr. America. And I won the most muscular man in the past 40 Mr. USA. That was kind of where I topped out in physique competition, but I went on to rowing. I love the rowing because they have worldwide rankings for your age group, males and females, and your weight. And when I started out with that, the main distance was 2,500 meters, and I scored in the top 25% in my age group there. I went to my first rowing contest up into Colorado, and I think my mindset there is a very important thing. And I've heard you mention this. I didn't know who the competition was going to be in Denver. I knew there was going to be some good rowers, people that had focused on rowing probably their whole life. So I went up there with the idea to use the rowing competition as a vehicle to motivate me to get better, to improve. I know I might not win it. If your goal is to be number one, you're going to be disappointed more often than not. But I just went up there to try to make me better. And interestingly, there was a college woman about my same height and weight, and her time was about 15 seconds better than mine. So when I came home, I focused on her as my target, and within about 2 weeks, I improved about 15 seconds. So it just shows if you can use people as to motivate you, how well they're doing. If they can do it, you think, well, maybe I can do it. And if you're realistic about your goals, you can do it. And I've continued on along that line as you get older. Obviously, at 80, you can't expect to be as good as you were at 40. But if you can compare yourself with other people your age, as you age, as you continue to train, the gap between you and people who don't train gets wider and wider. So you're kind of competing with your age group peers. So there's always somebody to compete with. And when I sit down to figure out my workouts, I look at my training diary. I always look for some way to improve. What keeps you motivated is improvement. So I try to focus on that. There's always some way you can add a few more pounds, a few more reps, change the exercise. There's always something. I better stop now while I'm ahead.
No, that's remarkable because your philosophy is one that if it was embraced by more people, we wouldn't have the health issues that we have right now. Everyone's concerned about the rising cost of healthcare. However, even though there's going to be bumps in the road, and I know that you've had a couple bumps because I'm familiar with your story, that being said, you've done everything possible to compete against yourself to improve. And that's why if anyone looks at your pictorial symposium, which we'll certainly post, they will see the transition to an 81-year-old man that by no means looks like an 81-year-old man. He looks like a man of all ages. Ageless, timeless would be appropriate to say for this gentleman. So going back, for me, example, Steve Reeves was somebody I saw as a child in the movie theater, and I thought, boy, if I could be like him, that would be remarkable. Who was the person that motivated you as a youngster?
Steve Klesanen. I don't know if you're familiar with his name, but he was a Mr. America, and he was in Albuquerque going to playing football at the University of New Mexico on the football team, and he was the first. He signed me up for my first lifting contest, so I always focused on him. And my dad and I started about 1955 going to the Mr. America. The Mr. America and the National Weightlifting Championships were combined. And I believe it was in 1956 that he won the Mr. America. So we were thrilled that he was in the Marine Corps at the time. When we went in the auditorium, he was leaning against the wall there in his Marine uniform, looking tremendous. He was also a good weightlifter. Anyway, he won the Mr. America contest. So he was always my goal, one of my role models. And years later, 30 years, I don't know, long time later, he knocked on the door. I came up and we opened up the door and there he was. So and he was older and he had some gyms and so on and had some ups and downs, but he visited with us several times. And now in my office, I've mounted a picture that he's a cover from a Weeder magazine with him on the cover with his trophy, and it said at the bottom, "The inspiration has reversed." So that was a wonderful thing to have a guy that was my role model years later saying the inspiration has reversed. I just treasure that cover. He's dead now, but I'll never forget him.
I think everybody needs somebody that encourages them to that extent. So whether they know it or not, they're still encouraging. Youngsters can watch somebody in the movies.
The other guy that's a role model is Bill Pearl. Do you know
Sure.
who Bill Pearl is? Bill
Absolutely.
Pearl won the first Mr. America that my father and I attended. So he was somebody that I followed a lot. And he was the Arnold Schwarzenegger of his time. He just challenged everybody and just wiped him out. But he's done more than that. He's gone on to write books. He's written something called, I forget the title now, but it's a 3-volume book of all of the people in the Iron Game and their histories and their photos. And so he's kind of done things to honor people in the physical culture field. I'm happy to say that I'm in one of those books, so I love that. But he's somebody that has just contributed, not just competed for himself. And he had a wonderful gym out in California for several years, a lot of years. So he's another role model. He was another, you see him standing up there, he just looked like a god. And he and I are good friends now too. So all of these things kind of come around and go around.
You pick good role models. I can remember seeing Bill Pearl in many of the Strength and Health magazines, and he's outstanding, as well as Boyer Coe and some of the people of that time.
Absolutely.
So interestingly, you are shredded, you're ripped. You carry a body fat percentage that is extremely low. Could you tell us what that is at this time?
It's between 5 and 7%. I weigh myself and measure I have a Tanita scale, which is a body composition scale. So I weigh myself on Saturday every week. That way, you don't want to weigh yourself too often because there's fluctuations, but that keeps me on the straight and narrow, so to speak. I don't count calories. I see what's happening to my body composition and my weight, and then I adjust my training as necessary. Usually it's pretty steady. If you came here, I could show you a weight record going back to 1990, maybe further if I hunted for it.
you practice a whole foods diet, and I don't even like to call it a diet because it's not. You have your mindset of just eating things pretty much in their natural state. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Diets that are based on denial don't work. And people, if they're just not going to stay hungry for a long period of time, or if they do lose weight by cutting their calories down too much, they're going to gain it all back. But if you eat these whole foods, a balanced diet of whole foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, I eat eggs, whole milk, fish, but and I make sure not to miss meals. So I keep my blood sugar on an even keel. You don't want to let yourself get hungry. And a key thing is when my wife prepares the evening meal, she brings it to me on a plate. We don't have anything else there. It's just on the plate. And if there's not any more food that you can see, reach for or anything, you're not likely to eat more. But you got to tell yourself, if I want more, I can get up and have more. But if you do it that way, you at least you have to get up. You have to think about it. And if you do that, you almost never want more. So it's a natural way, as you say, to control your calories without being on a diet. I don't think it is being on a diet. It's basically the Mediterranean diet, but it's the healthiest diet you can eat. So you can eat all you want, basically, but in a way that makes you feel hungry, but you're not tempting yourself. That doesn't mean I can't go out and have a dessert occasionally. I do, but we don't go out very often, and I only have one dessert usually.
So, having said that, you pretty much follow that path throughout your life. We're not going to see you pulling up at a drive-in window and supersizing your meal for lunch or dinner. Is that correct?
you, you have to catch me in a pretty unusual situation to do that.
Okay.
Not that I might be willing to try at one time.
So we're talking about people who are over the age of 50, but this also relates to younger individuals because I always look at fitness like a savings account. What you save up as a youth, and if you keep saving, you're going to end up where you are. So having said that,
as a matter of fact, there's a new study that just came out. You talk about muscle memory. They found that people who trained in their youth, maybe they backed off, but that the muscle memory was still there later on. So if they started exercising again, they would be able to improve more than if they hadn't done it in their youth. So what you say is more true than probably you knew.
absolutely. And it concerns me that there seems to be those school districts and even on college levels where there was a time where health and fitness activities were promoted, they're now pulling back for economic reasons. And I see this as a real concern for this generation coming up. The fact that we have obesity levels in the United States that are approaching 40% and overweight maybe another 20, it's concerning with this generation. Will they even be as healthy as the generation that we are in? And I don't think so from what physicians and researchers have suggested. What's your take on all this?
I think that's right. My latest book is called Take Charge. And it's different than the other books in that it's not just about basically me, what I do, why I do it, but it talks about all the different ways you can train. So there's something for almost everybody. One key thing that has been demonstrated recently is it's not how heavy you lift, but it's the effort. Women particularly are turned off by idea they have to lift heavy weights. But if they know they don't have to lift heavy weights, they just have to carry the set to the point where they're challenging their muscles and overload, which is a key thing. And that book has a lot of things like that Another thing about diet, people get in a big hurry to lose weight. And it's kind of the same thing that I said before, but that almost ensures that they're going to gain it all back. Only about a very small percentage of people that lose weight keep it off. But if they do it on a slow basis, a little step at a time, it's the same thing with exercise. If you haven't been doing anything, if you simply made it a point to get up every 30 minutes or so and just walk around the house, just move, and you find out how much better you feel. Your best ideas would come to you where you're moving around. And then maybe you would add something else. Maybe you'd start doing regular walks, and then eventually maybe a weight routine, which could maybe take only 20 minutes if you do it right. So if it's approaching it that way, one step at a time, I think that's what people should be focusing on, whether they're going to be or not. I think doctors sometimes, their experience is they're wasting their time trying to encourage people to exercise, because even if they tell them you're going to die if you don't, they don't. And I think a lot of the doctors, they can't figure out how to do it for themselves. But if this was more known, there's a lot of research money out there now for the benefits of exercise, because, of course, that doesn't cost very much, and the healthcare bill is just out of sight. So there's more and more research. I write articles, as you mentioned, for our website every month, and I never fail to find something new to write about. I try to write about cutting edge stuff. I just finished writing an article now for our September update, and they were testing the effect of weight training and aerobic training on reducing the fat around your heart. And there's two different layers of fat. And it turned out that weight training would burn the fat around the outer layer in a way that aerobic training wouldn't. And the reason is because weight training builds muscle mass. Muscle mass drives your metabolism. So you're burning more calories around the clock, where the aerobic exercise, particularly if you're just doing jogging or something like that, when you stop doing it, the calorie burn stops. So those two forms of exercise together is what helps to burn the excess fat around two different layers of your heart. They're finding more and more things like that. We talk a little more about strength training. Even Dr. Kenneth Cooper, who's the father of aerobics, now recommends weight training, particularly for those over 40. And the reason is at 40, your fast fibers start going down. Your slow fibers pretty much stay the same no matter what. But people that don't work their muscles, their fast fibers are going away. But with weight training, you can maintain those fibers. And that's very important because, again, it keeps your metabolism going, makes you less apt to get fat. It makes all parts of your body work. The muscles talk to all of your organs. I think everybody agrees now that exercise is the best medicine, better than any medicine or groups, drugs or doctors. It's what you can do for yourself. That's the theme of our website, to talk about things you can do for yourself. That it's not about drugs or anything like that, but what you can do for yourself. Some weight training and aerobics is something that's new, but the healthcare people, they're interested in that, but they've got to find a way to get into it. This gradual way that I mentioned before, I think, is a secret to that, but it takes a long time to convince people. I guess I've talked too much, but this is my area.
No, it's absolutely interesting, and I think anybody watching this would have a better understanding. You're an example. I mean, if anybody sees you, he's 81. How's this possible? Well, like you said, it's the best medicine. When you exercise from the time you're a youth and you keep pushing yourself, and weight training is vital, because we both know sarcopenia will occur, and it'll occur maybe even younger than 40, but it's definitely going to occur to everybody.
Exactly.
That being said, you can counteract it with resistance training. And as you said, if you don't want to be a power lifter, you don't have to be, but you do have to do something that makes those muscles grow or at least feel uncomfortable for a period of time. If you don't, you're going to lose it.
And the other factor there, which is very important for the healthcare system, you're more mobile. You're less apt to fall down.
That's correct.
The Senate minority leader is 77 and just recently fell over his piano and fractured his shoulder. So, and of course, a lot of times falling down, that's the beginning of the end. So weight training, you keep your mobility, you keep able to do things. So it's very important, more important than aerobics. Aerobics are important, but as you get older, I think even Cooper would acknowledge that weight training may become more important than aerobic exercise as the years pile up.
You go to the Cooper Clinic every year. They don't have much to tell you anymore, do they?
I go about every 18 months.
Okay.
And that's an interesting story. Dr. Arnie Jensen was a doctor at the Cooper Clinic, and he was the one that kind of introduced weight training there. They got a huge weight training center there now, but it wasn't so much when he came there. And when I was 50 years old, he'd read about me in Strength and Health in Muscle and Fitness magazine, and he called us on the telephone. I'd heard about the Cooper Clinic from reading from Dr. Sheehan, and so I was thrilled to get a call. But he was calling, asking me to come over to the Cooper Clinic, and he actually made a visit and stayed with us for a couple of days to tell us about it. But he wanted to convince them there of the benefits of strength training. And one thing they do in their overall test of your fitness and your health and so on is they have a treadmill test, and on the treadmill, every minute that it goes up a certain amount, get to a certain point, then it speeds up. And he had done some workout with me in the foothills, so he knew I might do pretty well. But I did 28 minutes, which put me 1.5% above the 99th percentile. And I think that impressed Dr. Cooper, because I think he had the idea that, bodybuilders are not going to be able to do that. I went back to next year and I went 29 minutes. I remember him. In fact, we're going to have a picture of he and I talking on this article that I've just done. And we were talking about what our times were, and I had told him the 29, and he said, man, he could only do 27. And some years later, after I'd been there for 20 years, I made it a point to go in and spend an hour with him. And he said he envied my muscle mass, that he wished that he had that muscle mass. And if he'd learned earlier about the benefits of weight training, he might have had it. But anyway, that's a long distance story of why I go to the Cooper Clinic. It's an amazing place. They're the world leader in preventive medicine. They call themselves that, and I believe it. But they do blood tests, and they do all kinds of tests. Like when I go back, I'm having little back problems, so they'll evaluate my back. So they have it all ready. And then in the afternoon, you have a consultation with your doctor about what the results were, what you might do. And as you say, usually I go there and I'm pleased to hear them tell me how well I'm doing. But they do find some problems from time to time that I wouldn't know about. So it's a wonderful place. It's not inexpensive. They don't take Medicare, but it's a wonderful place.
What would be your words to people who are not exercising, or perhaps they're just feeling as if they're too old at this point to start? You've done a lot of research on this. Is it ever too old? Are you ever too old to start?
Absolutely not. there's a book, I'm sure you heard about it. I can't think of the name now, written by doctors from Tufts, about the, you remember the name of the book that I'm talking about? They had levels of things, biomarkers, and their number one biomarker was strength. The number two biomarker was muscle mass, and it was kind of a domino thing. If those start going down, everything goes on. But in the course of that book, they said they'd had people coming there in their 90s, and they got stronger. They benefited. Everybody can benefit. So it's never too late. But as I mentioned before, you've got to recognize what level you are and begin slowly. You can't just jump into it and expect to lose 30 pounds in a couple of months or something. It's got to be slow. So, and people are not going to do anything unless they enjoy it. If they don't enjoy it, it's uncomfortable, they're not going to do it. But if they ease into it, as I talked about, just getting up and moving around and seeing that made them feel better, then they're willing to take the next step. It likes if you're climbing a mountain, you don't want to keep your focus on the mountaintop because it seemed like you're never getting there. But if you think about each step as one step towards that goal, then you're going to stay motivated. That's what I said about my workouts, always trying to improve, because it's progress that keeps them motivated. So you have to start them down at their level and slowly introduce them to it. They're going to have to do this themselves, but if they get the idea one step at a time, that's the secret. If we get people to do that, everybody 100% benefit. There's more and more articles now coming out by scientists and doctors. There's a lot of research, because, as I mentioned before, exercise doesn't cost much, but everybody can benefit from exercise. It's the best medicine that man ever discovered. And I've heard you write the same thing. It's absolutely true. That's what you're about.
That's absolutely what we're about, because you see the benefits. And the only thing I'll say about the Cooper Clinic, you set the bar higher now. So when I get to be 81, I'm going to have to compete with that number. I don't know if I can make it, but you certainly have set an example for everybody. And the question I have is, people would be shocked. They would think that every day you're in the weight room or every day you're on the rowing machine, but that's not true. You do have a set pattern of what you do and what you don't do. And part of that is rest. You want to talk about that a little bit? Absolutely.
People have the idea that I spend 6 hours a day in the gym. That's absolutely not right. Some people, that try to make training too complicated. Training boils down to overload. It means you have to challenge your body above what it's used to doing. It will respond. It doesn't have to be all that much. It depends on what your level is. And rest is the other key factor. And I only do two main workouts. One is a weight workout, so overall sizes. It takes about 45 minutes. I do that on Tuesday. And then on Saturday, I do my aerobic workout. That's when I might do the rower, or there's the same company puts out a ski erg where you're pulling down. So I row, which you extending your body. The ski erg, you're contracting your body, so that together they work the whole body. So my wife and I do this workout on Saturday, and we generally do intervals. The rower and the ski erg have wonderful monitors, so you can look at it and see exactly to the fraction of a second what you did last time. So maybe we might do 30-second intervals with maybe a minute, 2 minutes and a half rest, maybe from 1 to 4 of those. And I think that's better. A lot of the studies, they have a 4-minute effort and then 4-minute rest. 4 minutes is too long. You have too much time to think for 4 minutes, but this all out for 30 seconds really does work. So we do that on the rower and on the ski erg, and then we live about a block and a half from foothills. Just wonderful trails. There's hills, any angle, any challenge you want. They have steep hills, long, gradual hills, flat. So we usually go out there for maybe about 45 minutes. Now, those are the main workouts. But it's also important what happens between those workouts. And you have to stay active. You don't want to go push too hard, but you have to be active. We do it by walking around the house and walking in the neighborhood, which stimulates recovery. It also makes your body, your brain, everything work better. There's been a recent study done at the University of Texas in Austin by a doctor named Eddie Coyle, and he's the head of the Human Performance Laboratory there. But they had I think they did 3 workouts. I don't know, it was weight training, I think. But they had some of them be absolutely inactive between the workouts, and the others were active between the workouts. They were really inactive, immobility basically. And they find that the immobility canceled out the benefit of the exercise almost completely. And I thought that's not a very big study, but it makes the point. And so we do that by walking and staying active. But you don't want to push that too much. There's something called the black hole that I've written about. And the black hole is doing exercise between your main workouts, but you're doing it at a point where it doesn't promote recovery. It actually makes you tireder, beaten down, so it slows recovery, so you have less benefit from workout to workout. So you got to move, but not move too much. So that's basically our plan. So it's not a whole lot, but it's, as we've talked about before, it's focusing on improvement. You should see my wife on that ski erg. She doesn't like me to watch too much, but man, she really goes after it. So she wouldn't like me to tell her age, but she's almost my age, and she's also in wonderful shape. So it's I picked very well on my wife.
Well, and I've seen some pictures on your website, and no one would guess her age as well. And the other thing is, it's a wonderful thing to have couples work out together, because I've seen some research suggesting that actually enhances the marriage. So I don't know how long you've been married, but that's a good thing that you're working out together and that you're training together. It's good to have a colleague like that.
Been married over 50 years, and it's absolutely important. If I would have married, I did have a short marriage before this, and I was into weightlifting, heavy weightlifting, and I remember that I got on the scales and I weighed 200 pounds. I was happy about that. I wasn't fat. I was pretty strong. But man, she was very unhappy about it. In fact, she screamed at me. So I think if I would have stuck with her, that I wouldn't be where I am today. So anyways, I say I married very well. But that is important. You have to be somebody. I think there's so many where the man is active and the woman isn't, or the woman is active. I think there's more women exercising now than there is men. When the foothills up above our house, there's bicyclists and runners, and we see more women up there, just spectacular looking young women running more than, I see some men, but I believe there's more women. So that's a great thing.
And not only is it your physical capabilities, but your intellectual capabilities. We realize you're an intelligent individual, but we all know as well, with time, that can lessen. And I do believe, from reading the book Spark, which I'm sure you've read, and the fact that the brain-derived neurotropic factor And the fact that you're creating dendrites and neurons through your exercise has enhanced your ability to recall, because just in this interview, you've been able to recall so many different studies, and that's very difficult for anybody to do. So I commend you for that as well.
Well, I wrote a long article about that Spark book, because it proved that it does make your brain work better. This BNNF that you were mentioning there, they actually were able to see under the microscope that it was the exercise. I think they did it with rats, didn't they? Beginning that the exercise was creating this substance that made the brain work. So exercise does everything, makes everything from head to toe work better. If people could just understand that and do it at their level, it would change the world. That's what our website is about. That's what I'm interested in, is showing people how to help themselves. So that's basically what we do. We exercise. I do this. People send me research. I really don't have to find too much of this myself, but I write it up, and I love writing these articles. I think I've gotten to be a better writer. I've just finished the 492nd article for this next update, and I think we have a blessed life. I love what I do.
That takes a lot of effort just to write all those articles. And one thing I'll say is, having read many of them, you have an ability to take something that might be a difficult subject and then break it down into a much more understandable subject area that the average layperson can assimilate. So that's appreciated.
That's exactly what I try to do, is to try to simplify it where I'll understand it. For one thing, a lot of these studies, they have a lot of jargon that hell nobody can understand. And some of them are really not written all that well, but they're written for people, other researchers, instead of written for the man on the street to read. So I think there's a need for people to simplify and try to figure out. That's one thing my wife pushes me to. Not too many details. People want the bottom line. They want some of the details too. So she and I go around and around on some of these things, but she's a very, very good editor. When I finish, I take the draft down, and she always has some good suggestions. And we used to kind of cross swords about that. I was kind of jealous in what I did, but now I've learned to listen to her. That they're much better after she does it. This latest book, Take Charge, she edited that book, and in terms of overall helping a lot of people, that's probably the best book we've ever done. We recently had a real estate guy that ordered 350 copies of that book, so he was certainly convinced.
Well, we've taken a great deal of your time today, but it's appreciated. And my hope is that people that watch this will understand exactly what they're seeing. Here's what you have to do if you're viewing this right now. Think of somebody 81 that you know, and then when we think of that person, can they do what Clarence Bass can do? If they can, outstanding. Generally speaking, they won't be able to. Reason, motivation, constant improvement, and dedication to the task. Last question, Mr. Bass. When do you plan to retire?
Never.
Okay, that's what I thought would be the answer.
Yeah.
Well, it's been an honor to interview you today. And if you want to know more about Clarence Bass, you don't want to type in Clarence, you want to go to cbass.com. That's cbass.com. You'll be able to purchase books, DVDs, and get a plethora of articles that will just enhance your understanding of health and fitness. And just to say that it's been great interviewing you. I've learned a great deal, but now I'm ready to go work out. So I appreciate it. You've got me motivated even more. Thank you.
Actually, if you will just go on Google and type in my name, you'll be amazed at all the stuff that come out. We have a Wikipedia page that we're very proud of, but if you just Google my name, the Wikipedia page will be there, and our website will be there right at the top. So if you just remember Google and remember my name, people want to spell it Clarence, E-A-R, but it's A-R-E-N-C-E. That's why we call it cbass.com. I'm honored to be the first interview on your YouTube channel. I wish you success on that, and I'll be very interested to follow how you do.
Well, and we'll try to do everything possible to keep promoting individuals over the age of 50 like you, because what we want to do is we want to increase the positivity of life. When you think about it, we've read books, The Blue Zone, and they look at people in certain areas of the world, including Loma Linda, California. They live to be 100 or more. That's outstanding. And many of them are very healthy. But I would have to say most people would choose over longevity to just be healthy. You have both.
That's right. That's what exercise does, is that Dr. Cooper has talked about the trajectory of life, that ideally you would want to go along flat and then down. So it extends your health span and
Correct.
shortens your period of deterioration. If you're going to die, the quicker the better. But that's what the healthy lifestyle, the thing you promote, that's one of the major things that it does.
All right. Well, thank you again, and we hope to talk to you again. Maybe we'll do a part 2 sometime, because there's so much to cover. Take care, and God bless you.
You too. Thanks very much.